The diner smelled like burnt coffee and desperation at 2 a.m. I could feel the grease from the kitchen clinging to my skin, settling into my pores like it was claiming ownership. My feet screamed inside my worn sneakers. The left one had a hole near the toe that I'd covered with duct tape 3 weeks ago. The fluorescent lights above buzzed with that persistent electric hum that had become the soundtrack to my life, flickering occasionally as if they too were exhausted from working the graveyard shift. "Table 7 needs a refill, sweetie." Marge's voice cracked through my fog, and I nodded, grabbing the coffee pot with hands that had stopped shaking from exhaustion hours ago. They just moved now, mechanical, automatic. Pour, smile. Collect tips that barely covered the bus fare home. The diner was nearly empty, just old Joe in his usual corner booth, nursing the same cup of coffee he'd been drinking since midnight, and a couple of truckers who'd stumbled in smelling like diesel and cigarettes. And then there was table 12. I'd noticed them the moment they walked in, though I'd pretended not to. You learn to make yourself invisible in places like this. Don't stare at the expensive suits. Don't wonder why men in $1,000 shoes are eating meatloaf in a dive off Highway 9. Just pour the coffee, take the order, mind your business. But the little girl made it hard to look away. She couldn't have been more than 4, with dark curls that cascaded down her back like silk, the kind of hair that had never known a bargain shampoo bottle. Her dress was pristine white, completely out of place in the vinyl and chrome aesthetic of Sal's diner. She colored quietly in a book, while the 3 men at her table spoke in low voices, their words too soft for me to hear, but their body language screaming tension. One of the men kept glancing at the door. Another had his hand resting near his jacket, in a way that made my stomach clench with unease. I approached their table with the coffee pot, keeping my eyes down, my smile professional. "Refills?" The closest man, broad-shouldered, with a scar running through his left eyebrow, nodded curtly. As I poured, I caught a glimpse of something metallic beneath his jacket. My hand trembled slightly, and a drop of coffee splashed onto the saucer. "Sorry," I whispered. "It's fine." The man's voice was cold, dismissive. I didn't exist to him. I was just the help. The little girl looked up at me then, and her eyes, dark and impossibly large, locked onto mine. She smiled, sweet and innocent, and held up her coloring book. "Look." I made the butterfly purple, my heart clenched. "It's beautiful, honey. Sophia. Don't bother the waitress." The man across from her spoke firmly, but there was affection in his tone. He was different from the others, younger, with nervous energy radiating off him like heat. His leg bounced under the table, and sweat beaded on his upper lip despite the aggressive air conditioning. "She's not bothering me," I said softly, meaning it. Something about this little girl in her perfect dress, surrounded by these hard men in this grimy diner, made my chest ache with a nameless worry. I returned to the counter, wiping down surfaces that didn't need wiping, stealing glances at table 12. Marge caught me looking and leaned close, her breath stale with cigarettes. "Those ain't the kind of people you want to notice you, honey," she muttered. "Trust me. Pour their coffee, take their money, forget their faces." I nodded, but my eyes kept drifting back to the little girl. Sophia. Her name was Sophia. The bell above the door chimed, and 3 more men walked in. Everything changed. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The men at table 12 tensed immediately, hands moving to their jackets. The nervous one, Sophia's father, I realized, stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the linoleum. "We need to talk, Marcus." The man who'd just entered spoke calmly, but there was steel beneath the silk of his voice. He was tall, dressed in all black, with eyes that swept the room like a predator assessing prey. Those eyes landed on me for half a second, and I felt stripped bare, seen in a way that made me want to disappear into the walls. "There's nothing to talk about." Marcus, the nervous father, put himself between the newcomers and Sophia. "I told Dominic I'd have the money next month." "Next month isn't good enough." The man in black took a step forward. "You've been stealing from the family, Marcus. That has consequences." I should have walked away, should have gone to the kitchen, hidden in the back, let whatever was about to happen unfold without me. but Sophia was right there, her coloring book forgotten, her little face pale with fear she was too young to understand. "There's a child here," I heard myself say. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone braver than me. Everyone turned to look at me. Marge hissed something under her breath. Old Joe suddenly found his coffee fascinating. The man in black's eyes found mine again, and this time they stayed. Really looked. His expression was unreadable, a mask of control that must have taken years to perfect. "Stay out of this." But Marcus was pulling something from his jacket, and the men with him were doing the same, and suddenly, I wasn't thinking about being invisible or keeping my head down or making it through another shift. I was thinking about a little girl in a white dress who'd shown me her purple butterfly. I moved without deciding to move. My feet carried me across the diner floor as the first shot exploded through the air, a sound so loud it seemed to crack the world open. Sophia screamed, and I was diving, my body covering hers as we hit the floor hard. The impact knocked the air from my lungs. More gunfire, glass shattering, Marge screaming. The world reduced to chaos and smoke, and the thunder of bullets tearing through everything. Sophia's small body trembled beneath mine, her hands clutching at my stained uniform. I pressed her face into my chest, trying to shield her ears, her eyes, trying to protect her from the nightmare erupting around us. Something hot and sharp tore through my shoulder. The pain was incredible, white-hot and all-consuming. I gasped, tasting blood. But I didn't let go. Couldn't let go. My arms locked around Sophia like steel bands. "I've got you," I whispered into her hair, though I wasn't sure she could hear me over the gunfire. "I've got you, baby. I've got you." Another impact, this one against my ribs, stealing my breath, filling my mouth with copper. My vision blurred at the edges, darkness creeping in like a tide. But I held on. Even as my strength drained away, even as the cold started seeping into my bones, I held on. The shooting stopped as suddenly as it had started. The silence that followed was somehow worse, broken only by ragged breathing and the drip of something liquid hitting the floor. Blood, probably. Mine. Footsteps approached, expensive shoes clicking against linoleum. Someone crouched beside us, and I tried to curl tighter around Sophia, tried to be a better shield even though I was falling apart. "Let me see her." The voice was deep, commanding, edged with something that might have been concern. Hands, large and surprisingly gentle, touched my shoulder and I cried out, "She's hit. Call Dimitri. Now. Is she—" A different voice, younger, panicked. "She's breathing. Barely." The hands moved to my face, tilting it up. Through my failing vision, I saw him, the man in black, his face closer now, sharp features and dark eyes that held something like surprise. "Why did you do that?" I tried to answer, but only blood came out. Sophia was crying beneath me, alive and terrified, but alive. "She's nobody," someone else said. "Just a waitress. She's a fucking hero." The correction was sharp, angry. "Get the car. We're taking both of them." I wanted to protest, wanted to say I didn't need help, that I just needed to clock out and catch the bus home, but my body wasn't listening anymore. The darkness was winning, pulling me down into depths I couldn't fight. The last thing I felt was those hands lifting me, cradling me against a chest that smelled like expensive cologne and gunpowder. The last thing I heard was that deep voice, speaking words that didn't make sense. "You're going to be okay. I promise you. You're going to be okay." Then the darkness swallowed me whole, and I drowned in it. Consciousness returned in fragments, disjointed pieces of sensation that didn't fit together. Softness beneath me. Too soft. Wrong. The smell of clean linen and something floral. Jasmine, maybe. Pain, dull and throbbing, but distant somehow, like it was happening to someone else's body. I tried to open my eyes, but my lids felt weighted down, heavy as stones. My mouth was dry, tongue thick and useless. I attempted to move, and immediately regretted it as fire shot through my shoulder and ribs. "Don't move." That voice again, the one from the diner, deep and commanding. "You'll tear the stitches." Stitches? I forced my eyes open. blinking against light that seemed too bright, even though it was soft and golden. The ceiling above me was ornate, decorated with intricate molding that probably cost more than I made in a year. Where the hell was I? I turned my head, slowly, carefully, and nearly stopped breathing. The room was enormous, a bedroom, but not like any bedroom I'd ever seen. The bed I was lying in could have fit 5 people comfortably, draped in silk sheets that felt like water against my skin. Heavy curtains framed massive windows that overlooked. Was that a garden? An actual garden with fountains and marble statues? How are you feeling? I jerked at the voice, gasping at the pain the movement caused. He was sitting in a chair beside the bed, the man from the diner, still dressed in black, but without the jacket now. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with what looked like tattoos disappearing beneath the fabric. Where? My voice cracked. Where am I? My home. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, studying me with those dark, penetrating eyes. You've been unconscious for 2 days. 2 days? Sophia, I gasped, trying to sit up despite the screaming protest of my body. The little girl, is she? She's fine, unharmed, thanks to you. His hand moved to my shoulder, not pushing me down, just resting there, a gentle pressure. You took 3 bullets meant for her. The doctor said another inch to the right and you'd have bled out before we got you here. 3 bullets. The memories came flooding back, the diner, the gunfire, the little girl in my arms, Marcus. Her father. Is he dead? No emotion in the word, just fact. He made choices that had consequences. His daughter doesn't need to pay for his mistakes. I didn't know what to say to that. The room seemed to tilt slightly, and I realized whatever drugs were in my system were strong. Everything felt slightly unreal, like I was watching this happen to someone else. I swallowed hard. I need to call my work, explain why I didn't show up. They'll fire me if... You don't work there anymore. I blinked at him. What? The diner is closed. Permanently. Crime scene. He said it so casually, like he was commenting on the weather. Your apartment has been cleared out. Your things are here. The drugs must have been really strong because I couldn't have heard that right. You went to my apartment? I had people do it. You can't go back there. He stood, moving to a side table where a glass of water sat waiting. He brought it to me, holding it to my lips when my hands proved too shaky to grip it myself. The men who attacked us that night, they're part of a rival organization. They know you saved Sophia. That makes you a target. I choked on the water. A target? I'm just a waitress. I'm nobody. You stopped being nobody the moment you decided to be a hero. His thumb wiped a drop of water from my chin, the gesture oddly intimate. Sophia is important to a lot of people. What you did, protecting her, that means something in my world. Your world, I repeated numbly. The Mafia. You're Dominic Volkov. He said his name like it should mean something. When I just stared blankly, something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. You really don't know who I am, do you? Should I? Most people in this city do. He set the glass aside. I run things. The family, the territory, everything. A mafia boss. I'd saved the daughter of someone who'd stolen from the mafia, and now I was in a mafia boss's house, and I need to leave, I said, panic rising in my chest. This is insane. I can't be here. You need to heal. His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument, and then we'll discuss what happens next. What happens next? I go home. I find another job. You can't. He cut me off, and there was something in his eyes now, something hard and unmovable. The men who came for Marcus will come for you. They'll torture you for information about me, about my organization. Then they'll kill you, slowly, unless I protect you. The room spun. This can't be happening. It is. He reached out, his hand cupping my cheek with surprising gentleness. You saved something precious to me. That creates a debt. I always pay my debts. I don't want anything from you, I whispered. I just want my life back. That life is gone. No cruelty in his words, just truth. But I can give you a better one. Before I could process that, before I could argue or scream or demand answers that made sense, the door opened. A woman entered. Small, elegant, with silver hair swept into a perfect bun. She carried herself with the kind of authority that made me shrink back into the pillows. "Dominic, the family is waiting," she said in accented English. Russian, maybe. "We can't delay any longer." "I know, Mama." He stood, straightening his cuffs with practiced ease. Then he looked at me, and something in his expression made my blood run cold. "Rest. We'll talk more soon. There's something important I need to tell you." "What?" My voice came out small, frightened. He paused in the doorway, his mother already disappearing down the hall. When he turned back, his face was unreadable again, that perfect mask of control. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Volkov." The door closed behind him, and I was alone with those words echoing in my head like a death sentence. Mrs. Volkov. Mrs. Volkov. What the hell had I woken up into? I stared at the closed door for what felt like hours, my mind refusing to process what he'd just said. Mrs. Volkov. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. I was Emma Clark, 23-year-old waitress with $17 in her checking account and a studio apartment that smelled like mildew. I wasn't anyone's wife. I'd never even had a serious boyfriend. My hands trembled as I pulled back the silk sheets, ignoring the sharp protest from my shoulder. I needed to see for myself, needed to confirm this was all some drug-induced hallucination. But when I looked down at my left hand, my breath caught in my throat. A ring. Not just any ring. A massive diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light and threw rainbows across the pristine white bandages wrapped around my torso. The band was platinum, heavy and cold against my skin. Engraved on the inside, in delicate script, were 2 words: "Forever bound." "No," I whispered to the empty room. "No, no, no." I tried to pull it off, but it wouldn't budge past my knuckle. My fingers had swollen slightly. Or maybe the ring had been sized deliberately small. Panic clawed at my chest, making it hard to breathe. I yanked harder, twisting the metal, not caring that it hurt. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," I yelped, my head snapping up. A young woman stood in the doorway. I hadn't heard it open. She was probably close to my age, with dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail and striking features that spoke of mixed heritage. She wore designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe had. "Who are you?" I demanded, still clutching at the ring. "Katya, I work for Dominic." She moved into the room with the easy confidence of someone who belonged here. "I've been assigned to help you adjust." "Adjust to what? Being kidnapped?" The words burst out of me, sharp with hysteria. "He called me Mrs. Volkov. Did he, while I was unconscious, did he marry you?" "Yes," Katya said it so calmly, like she was confirming the weather forecast. She pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down, crossing her legs. 3 days ago. It was a small ceremony, just family and essential witnesses. The room tilted again. I pressed my good hand to my mouth, tasting bile. "That's not legal. I didn't consent. I was unconscious. That's complicated," Katya finished. "But in our world, legality is flexible. The papers are signed. The marriage is recognized by everyone who matters. In the eyes of the Bratva, you're Dominic Volkov's wife." "The Bratva?" "The Russian mafia." She watched me with dark eyes that revealed nothing. "Dominic is the Pakhan, the boss. What he says is law." I laughed, but it came out broken, edged with panic. "This is insane. People don't just wake up married to mob bosses. This doesn't happen in real life." "It does in this life." Katya leaned forward. "Listen, Emma. Can I call you Emma?" She didn't wait for an answer. "I know this is overwhelming, but you need to understand something. The moment you covered Sophia with your body, the moment you took those bullets, you became valuable. Not just to Dominic, but to his enemies. He said that. About being a target." My voice sounded hollow. "He wasn't exaggerating. The Kozlov family, the ones who came for Marcus, they're trying to start a war. They've been hitting our businesses, our people. Sophia is Dominic's goddaughter. Marcus was supposed to be protecting her, but instead, he was stealing from us to pay gambling debts to the Kozlovs. Katya's expression hardened. They used him, turned him into bait. They wanted to kill Sophia to hurt Dominic, to show they could strike at what he loves most. But I'm not. I'm nobody to him. You weren't. Then you became a witness, a liability. They'd have come for you, Emma, tortured you for information, and when you couldn't give them anything useful, because you don't know anything, they'd have killed you anyway, slowly, to send a message. The bandages around my ribs suddenly felt too tight. So he married me to, what? Protect me? Partially. Katya stood, walking to the windows and pulling back the curtains fully. Sunlight flooded the room, and I could see the gardens more clearly now, elaborate and beautiful, surrounded by high stone walls topped with cameras. But also to protect himself, you saved his goddaughter. That creates a blood debt. In our culture, such debts are sacred. By making you family, by binding you to him through marriage, he honors that debt. He also ensures your loyalty. Ensures my... I shook my head, anger cutting through the fear. I don't owe him loyalty. He drugged me and married me without my consent. You were dying. Katya turned back to face me, and for the first time I saw something like sympathy in her eyes. The doctors didn't think you'd make it through the first surgery. Dominic sat beside your bed for 36 hours straight. He brought in specialists from Moscow, from Switzerland. He spent over $2 million saving your life. $2 million. The number was so absurd I couldn't even process it. When you stabilized, Katya continued, the Kozlovs sent a message. They said they were coming for the hero waitress. They described you, Emma. Your name, your address, your routine. They knew what bus you took to work. They knew you were alone in the world. No family. No one to miss you if you disappeared. My throat tightened. I'd always thought being alone was just lonely. I'd never considered it might be dangerous. Dominic had a choice, Katya said softly. He could hide you, keep you as a protected witness, but that would be temporary. Eventually, you'd want to leave, to go back to your life. And the moment you stepped outside his protection, you'd be dead. Or... She gestured to my hand, to the ring that felt like a shackle. He could make you untouchable, make you his wife. In our world, harming a Pakan's wife is suicide. It would start a war that even the Kozlovs aren't ready for. So I'm what? A human shield? Your family now. Katya moved back to the bed, her expression serious. That means something here. It means protection, yes, but also respect. Resources. Power. No one will ever look through you again, Emma. No one will ever treat you like you're invisible. I wanted to scream that I didn't want power or resources. I wanted my crappy apartment and my graveyard shifts and my simple, uncomplicated life. But even as I thought it, I knew the truth. That life was gone. Dominic had been right about that much. What about Sophia? I asked quietly. The little girl? Is she really okay? Katya's expression softened. She's been asking about you. She calls you the butterfly lady. She wants to show you her coloring book. Something in my chest loosened slightly. At least the child was safe. At least that horror had meant something. Can I see her? Soon. First, you need to heal more, and... Katya hesitated. You need to understand what being Dominic's wife means. There are rules, expectations, dangers you need to be aware of. Of course there are. I laughed bitterly. Does he have other wives I should know about? Is this some polygamous mob thing? No. Katya's voice was sharp. Dominic has never been married before. He's had relationships, but nothing serious, nothing permanent. This... She gestured around the room. This is unprecedented. The family is shocked. Some are angry. Angry? You're an outsider. American. No connection to the Bratva bloodlines. Some see you as a weakness, a poor choice. Katya met my eyes steadily. Others see you as proof of Dominic's humanity. He's ruled with an iron fist for 10 years. Some were starting to wonder if he had a heart left at all. The door opened again, and this time an older woman entered. The one from before. The elegant one who'd called Dominic her son. She carried a tray with soup and bread, moving with practiced grace despite her age. Katya, leave us. Her accent was thicker than her son's, her voice carrying the weight of authority. Katya stood immediately. Yes, Svetlana. She glanced at me once before leaving, her expression unreadable. The woman, Svetlana, Dominic's mother, set the tray on the bedside table and studied me with eyes that were disturbingly similar to her son's. Sharp, assessing, missing nothing. You will eat, she said. Not a question, a command. I'm not hungry. You will eat anyway. She picked up the spoon and held it out. You are too thin. My son's wife cannot look like she is starving. I'm not really his wife, I said, but my voice wavered. Not in any way that matters. The papers say you are. The family accepts you are. God witnessed your vows, even if you did not speak them yourself. She pushed the spoon closer. In our world, that is all that matters. And what I want doesn't matter at all. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or respect. What you want is to be alive. My son has given you that. Now you must decide what to do with this gift. Gift? I laughed harshly. He took away my choice. Choice? Svetlana's expression hardened. You think you had choices before. You worked yourself to exhaustion for wages that barely kept you fed. You lived in a place where the locks did not work, and the heat failed every winter. You had no family, no future, no hope for anything better. She leaned closer. My son has given you a palace, safety, a name that carries weight in this city. And you call this a cage? It is a cage, I whispered. Golden or not. Perhaps. She finally set the spoon down, her gaze softening slightly. But in this cage, you are a queen. Outside, you are prey. Sometimes, girl, the cage is the only thing keeping the wolves away. She stood, smoothing her skirt. You will eat. You will rest. Tonight, you will join us for dinner. The family wishes to meet you properly. And if I refuse, then you will sit in this room and waste away while my son's enemies circle closer. She moved to the door, pausing with her hand on the frame. You are strong. You proved that when you protected Sophia. Do not mistake survival for weakness, Emma. Sometimes living requires more courage than dying. The door closed behind her, and I was alone again with the soup, the ring, and the growing realization that I wasn't going to wake up from this nightmare. Because it wasn't a nightmare. It was my new reality. I spent the rest of the day in that room, alternating between fury and fear. I tried the door. Unlocked, surprisingly, but when I stepped into the hallway, a man in a dark suit appeared immediately, his expression polite but firm. Mrs. Volkov, do you need something? I need to leave. I'm afraid that's not possible, for your safety. So the door was unlocked, but I was still a prisoner, just a prisoner with more expensive walls. I retreated back to the room, my shoulder throbbing despite the pain medication someone had left on the nightstand. I took 2 pills dry, hating myself for accepting anything from these people, but hating the pain more. As the sun began to set, Katya returned with an armful of clothes. The dinner is in 2 hours, she said, laying out a dress on the bed. It was deep emerald green, elegant and expensive. Svetlana thought this would suit you. I'm not going. Yes, you are. Katya's voice was gentle but unyielding. If you don't come down, Dominic will come up here and carry you. He's trying to give you space, Emma, trying to let you adjust, but there are appearances to maintain. The family needs to see you. They need to see him with you. Why? I demanded. Why does any of this matter? Because doubt is weakness, and in this world, weakness gets you killed. She moved closer, her expression serious. The Kozlovs are watching. Other families are watching. They're all waiting to see if this marriage is real or if you're just a temporary inconvenience. If they sense weakness, if they think Dominic made a mistake marrying you, they'll strike. And you'll be the target. So I'm supposed to just play along? Pretend to be in love with a man who married me while I was unconscious? You're supposed to survive. Katya handed me the dress. And eventually, maybe, you'll realize that survival here doesn't have to be a punishment. It could be a beginning. 2 hours later, I stood in front of a full-length mirror, barely recognizing myself. The dress fit perfectly. Katya had taken my measurements while I was unconscious, apparently. It hugged my curves in ways my uniform never had. The deep green making my pale skin look almost luminous. My hair had been washed and styled, falling in soft waves around my shoulders. Makeup covered the worst of the bruising on my face. I looked like someone else. someone who belonged in this world of marble and silk. The thought made me want to scrub it all off. "You're ready," Katya said from behind me. "Dominic is waiting." My heart hammered as I followed her through hallways that seemed designed to intimidate. High ceilings, oil paintings of stern-faced men, sculptures that probably cost more than most houses. Everything screamed old money, power, violence barely contained beneath a veneer of culture. We descended a grand staircase, and I heard voices below. Russian, mostly, with occasional English phrases mixed in. The conversation stopped as we appeared. Dominic stood at the base of the stairs, and for a moment, I forgot to breathe. He was dressed in a black suit that looked like it had been sewn onto his body, every line perfect, every detail exact. His dark hair was pushed back from his face, revealing sharp cheekbones and a jaw that could have been carved from stone. But it was his eyes that held me, dark and intense, tracking my every movement as I descended. He offered his hand when I reached the bottom step. I hesitated, and something flickered across his face. Disappointment? Frustration? "They're watchin'," he murmured, so low only I could hear. "Please." I placed my hand in his, hating the way my skin tingled at the contact. His fingers closed around mine, warm, strong, possessive. "You look beautiful," he said, and damn him, he sounded like he meant it. "I look like a doll you dressed up." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Just led me into a dining room where at least 20 people waited, their eyes boring into me with varying degrees of curiosity, suspicion, and hostility. This was my new family. These were the people who would decide if I lived or died, and at the head of the table, Dominic pulled out a chair beside his own, waiting for me to sit in a position of honor I hadn't earned and didn't want. "Welcome home, Mrs. Volkov," someone said, raising a glass, and as I sat down, feeling the weight of all those eyes, I realized with horrible clarity that there was no waking up from this. This was my life now. The dinner was a test, and I was failing spectacularly. Conversations flowed around me in rapid Russian, occasionally switching to English for my benefit, but never quite including me. I sat rigidly in my chair, hyper-aware of Dominic beside me, the heat radiating from his body, the way his hand occasionally brushed my arm when he reached for his wine glass, the subtle tension in his shoulders that told me he was as aware of me as I was of him. Across the table, a man with silver streaking his dark hair watched me with unconcealed disdain. He'd been introduced as Mikhail, Dominic's uncle, second in command. He hadn't smiled when he shook my hand. "So, Emma," he said now, his English heavily accented but clear, "tell us about yourself, your family." The table quieted. Everyone turned to look at me. "I don't have family," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My mother died when I was 12. I grew up in foster care." "Ah, orphan." Mikhail said it like a diagnosis. "And you worked as waitress?" "Yes." "What else can you do?" Another man asked, younger with a scar across his neck. "Besides serve coffee?" The insult was clear. Heat crept up my neck. But before I could respond, Dominic's hand landed on my thigh under the table. The touch was possessive, a warning to everyone watching. "She saved my goddaughter's life," Dominic said, his voice cold. "She took 3 bullets without hesitation. That's what she can do. How many of you can claim the same level of courage?" Silence. "She is brave, yes," Mikhail conceded, but his eyes remained skeptical. "But bravery alone does not make suitable Pakin's wife. She knows nothing of our world, our ways. How can she stand beside you when she does not even speak our language?" "She'll learn." Dominic's fingers tightened on my leg. "Just as she'll learn everything else she needs to know. And if she doesn't want to learn?" A woman spoke up, beautiful, with platinum blonde hair and lips painted blood red. She'd been introduced as Irina, widow of Dominic's cousin. "If she decides this life is not for her, what then? That won't happen," Dominic said flatly. "You seem very certain." Irina's smile was sharp. "But American girls are not like us. They value independence, freedom. How long before she grows tired of being kept?" "I'm sitting right here," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "You can address me directly instead of talking about me like I'm not in the room." Several people's eyes widened. Mikhail's expression darkened. But Dominic's lips curved into something that might have been approval. "You're right," Irina said, turning her full attention to me. "Forgive me. Tell me then, Emma, how does it feel to wake up married to a man you don't know? To a life you didn't choose?" Every eye was on me again. This was the real test, the real question everyone wanted answered. I could lie, could say I was grateful, honored, whatever they wanted to hear. But something in me, the same stubborn part that had survived foster care and poverty and years of being invisible, refused to bend. "It feels like I traded one kind of cage for another," I said quietly. "The first one was made of poverty. This one is made of gold. But they're both still cages." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Svetlana laughed, a sound like crystal breaking. "At least she is honest. That is more than can be said for most." She raised her glass to me, to honesty, a rare quality. A few others lifted their glasses, but many did not. Mikhail's expression remained stony. Irina looked intrigued, like I was a puzzle she wanted to solve. Dominic's hand left my thigh, and I felt the absence like cold water. When I glanced at him, his face was that perfect mask again, revealing nothing. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of courses I barely tasted, and conversations I couldn't follow. By the time dessert arrived, my shoulder was screaming, and exhaustion dragged at my bones. The pain medication was wearing off, and I felt every stitch, every bruise. "You're in pain," Dominic spoke quietly, leaning close enough that his breath stirred my hair. "You should have said something. Would it have mattered?" His jaw tightened. "Yes." He stood abruptly, commanding everyone's attention without saying a word. "Emma needs to rest. We'll continue this tomorrow." He offered me his hand again. This time I was too tired to refuse. He helped me stand, his arm sliding around my waist to support me when I swayed. The gesture looked tender, protective. No one could see how carefully he was avoiding putting pressure on my injured ribs. "Good night," Svetlana called. "Sleep well, children." The endearment made something twist in my stomach. Dominic didn't speak as he guided me up the stairs, down the hallway. When we reached the bedroom, my bedroom, I expected him to leave. Instead, he came inside, closing the door behind us. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the bed. "I can manage on my own. Sit, please." The please sounded like it cost him. I sat, too exhausted to argue. He moved to a cabinet, pulling out a first aid kit and prescription bottles. When he returned, he crouched before me, his large frame somehow making me feel smaller, more vulnerable. "I need to check your bandages," he said. "May I?" The fact that he actually asked permission, threw me off balance. I nodded slowly. His hands were gentle as they found the zipper at the back of my dress. The sound of it lowering seemed obscenely loud in the quiet room. I held my breath as he peeled the fabric away from my shoulders, exposing the bandages wrapped around my torso. "These need changing," he murmured, reaching for gauze and antiseptic. "This might hurt." "Everything hurts." The words came out more bitter than I'd intended. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, the mask slipped. I saw something raw there. Guilt, maybe, or regret. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be." "Do I?" I laughed without humor. "Because it seems like my rights don't matter much anymore. Your safety matters." He began unwrapping the old bandages, his touch careful. "Your life matters. My choice should matter too. It should." He pulled away the last layer of gauze, revealing the angry red wounds beneath, 2 entrance wounds in my shoulder and upper chest, stitched and swollen. "But I wasn't willing to gamble with your life so you could have an illusion of choice." "It's not an illusion if it's real. Isn't it?" He cleaned the wounds with antiseptic, his jaw tight when I hissed at the sting. "You think you were free before this? You were one missed paycheck away from homelessness, one bad shift away from not eating. That's not freedom, Emma. That's survival by the slimmest margin." "It was my life," I shot back. "My struggle. Mine to fail at if I wanted, and now it's mine to protect." He began wrapping fresh bandages, his movements practiced. "I know you don't understand. How could you? You don't know what it's like to lose someone because you weren't strong enough to keep them safe." Something in his voice made me pause. "Who did you lose?" His hand stilled for just a moment. My sister, Katarina. She was 19. They took her to get to me, rivals who thought they could force me to surrender territory. His voice went flat, emotionless. They sent her back piece by piece. It took them 3 days to kill her. Horror closed my throat. Dominic. Sophia looks like her. He finished securing the bandages and sat back. Same dark hair, same eyes. When I saw her in that diner, surrounded by bullets, all I could see was Katarina. All I could remember was failing to save her. His eyes found mine again, and they were haunted. You didn't fail. You didn't hesitate. You just acted like it was the most natural thing in the world to die for a stranger's child. I didn't think, I whispered. She was so small, so scared. I know. His hand came up, cupping my cheek with a gentleness that contradicted everything I knew about him. That's why I can't let them hurt you. Why I won't. You're not just a debt to repay, Emma. He stopped, jaw clenching. You're important. The air between us felt charged, dangerous. I should have pulled away, should have reminded him that I didn't want this. Didn't want him. But my body betrayed me, leaning into his touch like it was starved for gentleness. This doesn't change anything, I said weakly. I'm still a prisoner here. You're protected here. His thumb stroked across my cheekbone. There's a difference. Not to me. Something flickered in his eyes. Frustration, yes, but also something that looked like hurt. He pulled away, standing abruptly. You should rest. I'll have Katya bring your pain medication. Where will you sleep? The question came out before I could stop it. He paused at the door, his back to me. I have my own room, down the hall. Oh, I shouldn't have felt relieved, or disappointed, but somehow, I felt both. Emma. He turned back, his expression serious. But I meant what I said at the hospital. You're going to be okay. I'll make sure of it. Even if it destroys who I am in the process, you're stronger than you think. He opened the door. You'll survive this, and maybe you'll realize that surviving doesn't mean losing yourself. Sometimes it means becoming who you were always meant to be. He left before I could respond, the door closing with a soft click. I sat there in the dim light, wearing a designer dress with my wounds freshly bandaged, a diamond ring weighing down my finger, and tried to remember who I'd been 4 days ago. Emma Clark, waitress. Nobody. But that girl felt like a ghost now, fading with every passing hour. The days that followed developed a strange rhythm. I spent mornings in physical therapy. A stern woman named Olga, who pushed me through exercises that left me gasping and sweating, rebuilding strength I'd lost. Afternoons with Katya, who taught me basic Russian phrases and the complicated hierarchy of the bratva. Evenings at family dinners where I was slowly, grudgingly accepted by some, and openly resented by others. And nights I spent alone in that enormous bed, listening to the house settle, wondering if Dominic was sleeping, or if he was down the hall, working through mountains of paperwork and phone calls that ran his criminal empire. I saw him in glimpses, at breakfast, when he'd ask how I was feeling, at dinner, when he'd sit beside me and run interference with the more hostile family members, in passing in the hallways, always with that careful distance between us, like he was afraid to get too close, like he was afraid I'd break, or maybe afraid of what might happen if he stopped holding back. A week after I'd woken in his house, Katya brought me to a different part of the estate, a wing I hadn't seen before. She opened a door, and my breath caught. It was a library, a real library with floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with books in multiple languages. Leather chairs sat beside tall windows. A fireplace crackled softly. It smelled like paper and wood smoke and possibility. Dominic thought you might like this, Katya said softly. He said he noticed you didn't have any books in your apartment, just a Kindle with a cracked screen. My throat tightened. He'd noticed that? In the middle of everything else, the violence, the chaos, the life or death decisions, he'd noticed what I read. He reads too, Katya continued, usually late at night when he can't sleep. You might run into him here sometimes." She left me alone in that beautiful room, surrounded by stories, and for the first time since waking in this gilded cage, I felt something other than fear or anger. I felt possibility. That night, I found myself unable to sleep. The pain medication made me drowsy, but my mind raced, replaying the dinner conversation, Mikhail's thinly veiled hostility, Irina's calculating looks. I needed air, space, something other than these four walls. I slipped from bed, pulling on a robe Katya had left, and ventured into the hallway. The guard who usually stood watch was gone. Shift change, maybe. I made it to the stairs unchallenged. The house was different at night. Shadows pooled in corners. Moonlight streamed through windows, painting everything silver and black. I found myself drawn back to the library, pushing open the door quietly. I wasn't alone. Dominic sat in one of the leather chairs, a book open in his lap, a glass of amber liquid on the table beside him. He looked up when I entered, surprise flickering across his face before it settled into something softer. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "No," I hovered in the doorway, uncertain. "I can leave if you want privacy." "Stay." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please." I moved into the room, settling into the offered chair. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. This man who'd stolen my life, and this woman who'd saved his goddaughter, two strangers bound by violence and vows spoken by only one of them. "What are you reading?" I asked finally. He held up the book. "Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. I've read it a dozen times. Do you relate to Raskolnikov, the murderer who thinks he's above morality?" His lips curved slightly. "I relate to his guilt, the way it eats at him, the way he can't escape what he's done no matter how he tries to justify it." The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. "Do you feel guilty about marrying me?" "Yes." No hesitation. "Every time I see you look at that ring like it's a shackle, every time you flinch when I come near, every time you call this place a cage." He set the book aside. "But I'd do it again, without hesitation, because you're alive, and that matters more than your temporary hatred of me." "Temporary?" I raised an eyebrow. "I'm an optimist." The self-deprecating humor was unexpected. Or maybe just delusional. Despite everything, I almost smiled. "You're a mafia boss. You traffic in violence and fear. You run an empire built on blood. But you read Dostoevsky and worry about a stranger's feelings. How does that work?" The same way a waitress with nothing throws herself in front of bullets for a child she's never met. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "We're all contradictions, Emma. We're all trying to survive in ways that make sense to us, even when they don't make sense to anyone else." He reached for his glass, took a slow sip. The silence stretched between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was strange, almost companionable. "Can I ask you something?" I said finally. "Anything. Why did you sit with me when I was unconscious? Katya said you stayed for 36 hours straight." His expression shuddered slightly. "You were dying. Because of me. Because my world touched yours and turned it into a battlefield. That's not an answer. No?" He studied me over the rim of his glass. "Then maybe the answer is that I couldn't walk away. You'd given everything to save someone I love, and I couldn't." He stopped, jaw tight. "I couldn't let you disappear into the dark alone." Something in my chest cracked open. Just a little, just enough to let in the tiniest sliver of understanding. He was a monster. He'd taken my choice, stolen my life, imprisoned me in silk and diamonds, but he was also a man who'd sat vigil beside a dying stranger, who felt guilty, who read Russian literature and worried about whether I hated him. "I don't know how to do this," I whispered. "Be your wife. Live this life. I don't know who I'm supposed to be here. Be yourself." He set down the glass and stood, moving to crouch before my chair like he had when changing my bandages. Up close, I could see the lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw. That brave, reckless woman who threw herself into gunfire. That's who I want. Not some docile, broken version you think I expect, but I am broken. The admission hurt. You broke me when you took away my choice. Then let me help you heal. His hand reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his fingers laced with mine. The touch sent electricity up my arm. Let me prove that this cage can become a home, that this ring can mean something other than ownership. What if it can't? What if I never stop seeing it as a prison? Then I'll spend the rest of my life trying to change your mind. His thumb stroked across my knuckles. Because you're worth the effort, Emma. You're worth everything. The rawness in his voice undid something in me. Before I could think better of it, before fear or anger could stop me, I reached out with my free hand and touched his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw, feeling the warmth of his skin. He went absolutely still, barely breathing, like I was a wild thing he was afraid to startle. I don't trust you, I said softly. I know. I'm not sure I'll ever love you. I know that too. But maybe... I swallowed hard. Maybe I can try to survive this without hating every moment, without hating you. Something blazed in his eyes, hope, fierce and desperate. That's all I'm asking, just a chance. The space between us felt charged, dangerous. I should have pulled away, should have retreated to safety. Instead, I leaned forward and pressed my lips to his. It was just a brush of contact, tentative, testing. But it felt like jumping off a cliff, like free-falling into the unknown. Dominic made a sound low in his throat, his hand coming up to cup the back of my head, deepening the kiss with a hunger that should have terrified me. But it didn't. Because somewhere in the darkness of this new life, I'd found a single point of light, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to find my way through. The kiss broke us both open. Dominic pulled back first, his breathing ragged, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my stomach flip. His hand remained cradled against my neck, thumb tracing the line of my jaw like I was something precious he was afraid to break. Emma, he whispered, my name a prayer and a question. I didn't have an answer, didn't know what this meant or where it could possibly lead. So instead of speaking, I kissed him again, harder this time, with more certainty. His arms came around me carefully, mindful of my healing wounds, pulling me closer until I was practically in his lap. This was insane. This was wrong. This was the first time in a week I'd felt anything other than lost. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. I should let you rest. Probably. Neither of us moved. Emma. His voice was rough. I need you to understand something. That kiss, it doesn't obligate you to anything. You don't owe me affection or anything else. I would never, I know. And somehow I did. For all his violence, all his control over my life, I believed he wouldn't force this. I kissed you because I wanted to, not because I had to. His exhale was shaky. Why? I don't know. I pulled back enough to see his face. Maybe because you're the only real thing in this surreal nightmare. Maybe because I'm tired of feeling nothing but anger and fear. Or maybe... I hesitated. Maybe because when you look at me, I don't feel invisible anymore. His hand cupped my cheek. You were never invisible. The world was just too blind to see you. The next morning, I woke to find a note on my nightstand in bold, masculine handwriting. Meeting in the city. Back by dinner. D. Something about that simple note, the casual intimacy of it, the assumption that I'd want to know his whereabouts, made my chest feel strange. Katya arrived with breakfast and a knowing smile. You look different today. Different how? Less like a prisoner, more like someone who's decided to live. She set the tray down. Whatever happened, I'm glad. I didn't tell her about the kiss, didn't know how to explain what I barely understood myself. Instead, I asked, can I see Sophia today? Katya's expression brightened. She's been asking for you constantly. Dominic's been putting her off until you were stronger. But I think you're ready. An hour later, I found myself in a sun-filled playroom on the 3rd floor. Sophia sat on the floor surrounded by coloring books and crayons, but the moment she saw me, she scrambled up and ran. Butterfly lady. She crashed into my legs, hugging them tight. I knelt carefully, wincing at the pull in my shoulder, and gathered her into my arms. She smelled like baby shampoo and strawberries. Hi, sweetheart. I've missed you. Uncle Domi said you were sleeping for a really long time. Her small hands touched my face. Did it hurt? When the bad men tried to hurt me and you stopped them? My throat tightened. A little. But you're safe now. That's all that matters. Uncle Domi says you're family now. My new aunt. She beamed. I always wanted an aunt. Family. The word still felt foreign, impossible. But looking at this child, alive and smiling because of choices I'd made something in my chest ease. Want to color with me? Sophia tugged my hand. I'm making a picture for you. We spent the next hour on the floor, Sophia chattering away about her favorite colors and the new dolls Uncle Domi had bought her. She told me about her mama, Dominic's cousin who died in childbirth, and how she lived with her babushka now, but visited Uncle Domi all the time. He's scary sometimes, she confided, her voice dropping to a whisper, but not to me. Never to me. He loves you very much, I said softly. He loves you too. She said it with such certainty. I heard him tell babushka. He said you were brave and special, and he was going to take care of you forever. My hand stilled on the crayon. When did he say that? When you were sleeping. I came to visit you and he was sitting by your bed. He looked really sad, her little face scrunched up, but he's not sad anymore, so I think you made him happy again. Dominic returned as promised, just as the sun was setting. I was in the library, my refuge now, when he found me. Sophia tells me you spent the afternoon together. He leaned against the doorframe, still in his suit, looking exhausted but somehow more relaxed than I'd seen him. She's wonderful, sweet and funny and so full of life. I closed my book. Thank you for letting me see her. You don't need to thank me. She's been desperate to see you. He moved into the room, loosening his tie. She's also been telling everyone that her new aunt is the bravest person in the world. She's biased. She's right. He sat in the chair across from me, the same positions we'd occupied last night. Was this becoming our ritual, meeting here in the quiet hours, talking like normal people instead of captor and captive? How was your meeting? I asked. Something dark crossed his face. Complicated. The Kozlovs are pushing harder than expected. They hit one of our shipments this morning. Shipments of what? He studied me for a moment, as if deciding how much to tell me. Import-export. Legitimate businesses mostly. But some less legitimate. Weapons, information, protection services. You mean extortion. I mean keeping people safe from worse alternatives. His jaw tightened. I'm not asking you to approve of what I do, Emma, but I won't apologize for it either. This is who I am. I know. And I was starting to understand that. He wasn't a villain in a story. He was a man who'd grown up in a world of violence and carved out power through brutality. It didn't make it right, but it made it real. Did anyone get hurt? In the attack? 2 of my men. They'll recover. He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture betraying his stress. But it's escalating. I may need to leave the city for a few days. Handle things personally. Fear spiked through me. Is it dangerous? Everything I do is dangerous. He met my eyes. But I'll come back. I promise to protect you. I won't break that promise. What about protecting yourself? Something in his expression softened. Worried about me, Mrs. Volkov? The name still felt strange, but less like a curse now. Maybe. A little. He stood, crossing to my chair, and pulled me to my feet. His hands framed my face, gentle despite their capacity for violence. I have something for you. Close your eyes. Dominic, please. Trust me, I did somehow. Felt him move away, heard a drawer open. Then his hands were at my throat, fastening something cool against my skin. Open. I looked down. A necklace. Delicate platinum chain with a small pendant. I lifted it, examining the design. A butterfly, its wings spread, rendered in tiny diamonds and emeralds. Sophia told me about her purple butterfly, the one she colored the night we met. His voice was low. I thought you should have one too, something beautiful that's just yours. Tears burned my eyes. You didn't have to. I wanted to. His thumb caught a tear as it fell. I want to give you everything, Emma. Not to buy you or control you, but because you deserve beautiful things. You deserve so much more than what life gave you. I kissed him then, rising on my toes despite the protest of my healing body. This kiss was different from last night, less tentative, more certain. When his arms came around me, pulling me flush against him, I didn't feel trapped. I felt found. "Come with me," I whispered against his lips. "When you leave the city, take me with you." He pulled back, eyes searching mine. "It's too dangerous. Staying here not knowing if you're alive is worse." My hands fisted in his shirt. I don't want to sit in this house wondering if you're coming back. Please. Emma, I know it's crazy. I know I barely know you, but whatever this is, I gestured between us. I want to see where it goes, and I can't do that if you're dead. His laugh was rough, almost broken. "You're going to destroy me. Is that a yes?" "It's an absolutely not. It's me telling you that you're insane for even asking." He kissed me again, deep and desperate. "And it's also me saying yes, because apparently I can't deny you anything." We left for Moscow 3 days later. The private jet was obscene in its luxury. Leather seats that reclined into beds, a full bar, and windows that made the clouds look close enough to touch. I pressed my face against the glass like a child, watching America disappear beneath us, and tried not to think about the fact that I'd never left the country before, had never even left my home state. Dominic worked through most of the flight, his laptop open, phone pressed to his ear as he conducted business in rapid Russian. But occasionally, he'd look up and find me watching him, and something would soften in his expression. He'd reach for my hand, press a kiss to my knuckles, before returning to whatever crisis demanded his attention. I was learning that this was his life. Constant motion, constant vigilance, the weight of an empire resting on his shoulders. And somehow, impossibly, I was part of that now. Moscow hit me like a physical force. The city sprawled beneath gray skies, all Soviet architecture mixed with modern glass towers, beautiful and brutal in equal measure. Dominic's penthouse overlooked the city center, another gilded cage, but this one felt different, more dangerous. The security was triple what it had been at the estate, armed men at every entrance, cameras covering every angle. "The meeting is tomorrow," Dominic told me as we settled in. "You'll stay here with Dmitri and his team. They're the best." "What happens at this meeting?" His jaw tightened. "The Kozlovs and I negotiate. Either they back off or I make them back off." The coldness in his voice reminded me exactly who he was, what he was capable of. That night, I lay in bed beside him. We'd stopped pretending we needed separate rooms, and traced the tattoos that covered his chest and arms. Orthodox crosses, Cyrillic script, images I didn't understand, but that clearly meant something in his world. "Tell me about these," I whispered. His hand covered mine, stilling my exploration. Each one marked something: a rank earned, a crime committed, a person lost. He guided my finger to a date etched over his heart. "That's the day Katerina died. I got it so I'd never forget what weakness costs. You weren't weak. You were human. In my world, those are the same thing." He turned to face me, our noses nearly touching. "Promise me something." "What?" "If something goes wrong tomorrow, if things turn bad, you'll do exactly what Dmitri tells you. You'll run if he says run. You won't try to be a hero." Fear clenched my stomach. "Dominic, promise me, Emma." His hand cupped my face. "I can face anything as long as I know you're safe." "I promise." The words tasted like ash, "but you have to promise to come back to me. Always." He kissed me slowly, thoroughly, like he was memorizing the taste of me. "I'll always come back to you." The next morning, I woke to an empty bed and a note. "Be brave. Be safe. Be mine. D." The hours crawled by. I tried to read, to distract myself, but every sound
Dmitri
made me
stationed
jump. Himself by the window, his expression grim, checking his phone constantly. "How long does a meeting like this usually take?" I asked finally. "Depends. Could be an hour, could be all day." He glanced at me. "Try not to worry. The boss knows what he's doing." But I did worry. Paced the penthouse like a caged animal, that butterfly necklace heavy against my throat, wondering if I'd made the worst mistake of my life begging to come here. The sun was setting when Dmitri's phone rang. He answered in clipped Russian, his face going pale. Then he was moving, grabbing my arm. "We need to leave. Now." "What? Why? What happened?" The Kozlovs brought more men than agreed. It's an ambush. He pulled me toward the door. Dominic's holding them off, but we need to... The windows exploded inward. Glass rained down as gunfire erupted. Dmitri shoved me to the floor, his body covering mine as bullets tore through the penthouse. I screamed, my hands over my head, memories of the diner flooding back. Not again. Please, not again. Stay down, Dmitri fired back, his gun loud enough to make my ears ring. More of Dominic's men poured in from somewhere, returning fire, shouting in Russian. Through the chaos, I heard it, a sound that made my blood freeze. Dominic's voice roaring my name. He crashed through the door, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead, his suit torn, gun in hand. His eyes found me on the floor, and something like relief crossed his face before it hardened into fury. "Get her out," he shouted at Dmitri. "Service elevator now. I'm not leaving you." I tried to stand, but Dmitri held me down. "You promised." Dominic fired at someone I couldn't see. "You promised me, Emma." More gunfire. More glass breaking. The world reduced to smoke and noise and terror. Then Dmitri was hauling me up, dragging me toward a door I hadn't noticed before. I fought him, screaming Dominic's name, reaching for him even as distance grew between us. The last thing I saw before the door closed was Dominic, standing in the center of chaos, an avenging angel painted in blood and violence, keeping the monsters at bay so I could escape. Then Dmitri was pulling me downstairs, through tunnels, into a car that squealed away from the building just as an explosion lit up the Moscow sky. "No!" I clawed at the door, trying to get out, to go back. "We have to go back. Dominic is... He'll make it out." But Dmitri's voice wavered. He always does. We drove for what felt like hours but was probably minutes. My ears rang. My throat was raw from screaming. The butterfly necklace felt like a noose. Finally, the car stopped at a private airfield. A jet waited, engines already running. "Where are we going?" I asked numbly. "Somewhere safe." Those were the boss's orders. Dmitri's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his face went slack. "Oh, thank God." "What?" "What is it?" He showed me the screen. A text in Russian, but he translated. "Package secure. Target neutralized. Coming home." The relief was so intense I couldn't breathe. Dominic was alive. He was coming home. We flew back to America, to the estate that felt less like a prison now, and more like a sanctuary. I spent 2 days in a fog of fear and waiting, barely eating, hardly sleeping, that necklace clutched in my fist like a lifeline. When Dominic finally walked through the door, I didn't think, didn't hesitate, just ran. I hit him hard enough that he staggered, my arms locking around his neck, face buried in his chest. He smelled like smoke and copper and something medicinal, but he was solid and warm and alive. "You're okay," I sobbed into his shirt. "You're okay." I promised, didn't I? His arms came around me, holding me so tight it almost hurt. I promised I'd come back. I pulled back just enough to see his face. Bruised, stitched, exhausted but whole. "Don't ever do that to me again." "Do what?" "Make me leave you behind. Make me run while you stay and fight." Tears streamed down my face. "I can't. I won't." He kissed me, cutting off my words. It was rough and desperate, tasting like blood and relief and promises neither of us had known we'd make. When we broke apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. "The Kozlovs are done. Finished. We've brokered peace with the other families. You're safe now. Really safe." "I don't care about safe." My hands fisted in his shirt. "I care about you. About this. About us." "Us," he repeated, like the word was foreign. Precious. "Is there an us?" "I think there has been since the moment you sat beside my hospital bed for 36 hours. I touched his battered face gently. "Since you gave me a library and a butterfly necklace. Since you looked at me like I was worth saving." "You are worth saving. Worth everything." His voice cracked. "I know this started wrong. I know I took your choice. But Emma, if you'll give me a chance, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that this can be real, that we can be real. I'm terrified," I admitted. "Of this world. Of what it means to be your wife. Of losing myself in all of this." "Then we'll be terrified together." He kissed me again, softer this time. But you won't lose yourself. I won't let you. The woman who threw herself in front of bullets. That's who you are. That's who you'll always be. My brave, impossible, beautiful Emma. I kissed him back, pouring everything into it, all my fear and hope and the strange, fragile love that was growing despite everything that should have prevented it. Take me to bed, I whispered against his lips. Your bed. Our bed. And tomorrow we'll figure out what our life looks like. But tonight, I just need you to hold me and prove that we both survived this. He lifted me carefully, mindful of my still healing wounds, and carried me up those grand stairs. And for the first time since waking in this world of violence and silk, I wasn't being carried as a prisoner or a possession. I was being carried home. 6 months later, I stood in that same library where everything had shifted, Sophia coloring at my feet while I read. Dominic walked in, loosening his tie, and the smile that crossed his face when he saw us made my chest warm. My girls, he said, crouching to kiss Sophia's head before pulling me into his arms. Hard day? I murmured. Nothing I can't handle. His lips found mine, the kiss familiar now, easy. Especially when I know I'm coming home to this. Sophia looked up, giggling. Are you going to be all kissy again? That's gross. One day you'll understand, Dominic told her seriously. When you're 35 and your uncle finally lets you date. That's not fair. Life rarely is, Princessa. But his eyes were on me, soft with something that looked like contentment. Like peace. I'd learned so much in 6 months. Learned Russian. Learned the politics of his world. Learned how to stand beside him at meetings and dinners. How to be the Pakan's wife without losing Emma in the process. But more than that, I'd learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can become the door to everything you didn't know you needed. That cages can become homes. That choices taken away can lead to choices freely made. I love you, I told him, the words still new enough to feel precious, in case I forget to mention it today. You could never forget. He pulled me closer, his hand resting on my stomach, where the smallest swell was just beginning to show. Our secret still, for a few more weeks. You tell me every time you look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm your home too. And he was. This violent, complicated, impossible man had become my home. This world of danger and diamonds had become my life. I wasn't the invisible waitress anymore. Wasn't the girl who survived on the margins. I was Emma Volkov. Wife. Aunt. Soon-to-be mother. And finally, I was exactly who I was meant to be. The butterfly had spread her wings and learned to fly in the most unexpected place. In a cage that became a kingdom, with a monster who became a man, and a love story that started with gunfire and ended with grace.